Hello and welcome to ATFTV. I'm Christine Zhou reporting from London. Today we welcome Peter Knez, Head of Data and Technology at ATFI, Christian Kronsieder, CEO of Swiss-based index creator All Index, and Alfred Chu, a venture capitalist focused on electric vehicles. They join us today to discuss the new ATFI Global Green Energy Index and the role it will play in explaining today's rapidly growing EV sector. Welcome to ATFTV, Peter, Christian, and Alfred.
Thank you very much, Christine.
Nice to meet you, Christine.
Nice to meet you as well, Christine.
So, Peter, let's start with you. What role can indices play in allowing for the better understanding of supply chains? Talking specifically, how can they accurately monitor a rapidly developing and highly innovative sector such as electric vehicles?
So I think that to understand that question, it might probably be more beneficial to start with sort of a global context of what's going on and how it's impacting on global supply chains, and it's more specifically what's happening within the electric vehicle space, and then the challenges of capturing that in sort of a financial product like an index. So to begin with, I think, this is a theme we've discussed in the past, but there is this profound global regime change going on as the world geopolitically and economically transitions to sort of a multipolar system anchored by both the United States and China. And so that regime change that we're really in the early innings of in many ways is having a profound effect on the restructuring of global supply chains. This is motivated mostly by security around those supply chains, as well as the increasing pressure on local labor markets or regional labor markets. And so what you've kind of seen is you've seen a regionalization of supply chains from global supply chains. For example, in semiconductor space, which is critical for electric vehicles, which our distinguished guest Alfred will talk about in a few minutes, you see that TSMC is in partnership out of Taiwan, is in partnership with the United States to build a fabrication plant in Arizona, so that the United States now, relative to the past, now wants to have their own fabrication plants. And you see that in the migration of technology firms from China into India. So those are all examples of the sort of regionalization of global supply chains in the electric vehicle space, or certainly components of the supply chain that are critical for the electrical vehicle space. And you see, and I'll turn it over to Alfred, but you see in the battery component of the supply chain for electric vehicles, you see the regionalization of that, where manufacturing now for an EV firm that might want to capture global market share, that manufacturing is basically regionalized. In other words, a manufacturing plant will be in Europe, and they'll have one in India, they'll have one in China, and they'll have one in the US. As a rather, in the previous regime, manufacturing might be isolated in the low-cost, low geography, such was typically China. So that's been a big shift.
Let me turn to you, Alfred. What are your thoughts?
Yes, I think Peter's captured this trend very well. For the last decade, what I've observed is that China has really pushed for increased localization of their supply chain, and with a focus on import replacement and economic and innovation security. And so in the last decade, we've seen that in all sort of clean energy areas, there's been a requirement for 70% kind of local content kind of rule in order to qualify for any sort of subsidies or permits to build or sell into the marketplace. It really kind of goes to show where the trend is heading in terms of local supply chains. And I imagine longer term in the U.S. and other regions of the world, we'll see increasing requirements for localization as a requirement for any sort of subsidies and sort of to access the general market.
And Christian, what is your viewpoint?
Well, from an index construction point of view, this poses a very interesting challenge because, as you might have heard from Peter and also from Alfred further, there is a sort of a localization of the supply chains, which means that from an index construction point of view, we have to cast a wider net than you usually do. So we not only have to look into financial data, but also into alternative data in order to find those companies which then dominate the local supply chain markets. So that's why for us, it's quite interesting to see how we can apply advanced algorithms like machine learning and AI to actually find those suppliers, which are not as prevalent as you might usually do this in a regular index construction setting.